Hi, I'm Karlen. I'm a librarian at the Clearwater Public Library. One of my favorite genres is poetry. I like poetry because I think a lot of times people have a hard time reading poetry because it's not necessarily always literal, and a lot of times you kind of have to think of a poem more as like an abstract painting, or like song lyrics, or even song lyrics in a language that you don't know, where it's more about the impression, it's more about the feeling, it's more about sort of an image impressed on you by the words rather than the literal meaning of the words, which oftentimes do not make sense. And I actually didn't consider myself a poetry fan until probably very recent years, although I've been reading poetry since I was a very small child. My grandmother, Florence, was a big fan of poetry, and she had me read all of the classics. She didn't have me read them, but she encouraged me to read them, and she used to quote a lot of poetry and read poems to me and with me. And so some of the older favorites are John Donne and Robert Frost, and I read all of the Lord Byron and Keats and Shelley and Dickinson, all of the big names. I grew up reading those and read them throughout my childhood and early adulthood, and then probably in the last 8 years or so, I started reading more modern poetry, more contemporary poetry, which I think is some of the harder stuff for people to get into, because it's a little more it can be a little more abstract or a little more challenging. One of my favorite collections that I've read recently was The Carrying by Ada Limon. She talks a lot about grief and loss, and I read that collection right around the time that there had been a couple of deaths in my family, and I really connected with a lot of the poems in that collection. And she also talks about recovery and hope, and finding good things when things are bad, and it was a really powerful collection for me at that time.